What are dungeons without traps, puzzles, and challenges? I've got 3 dungeon challenges for you to bring to your table that are actually interactive. We're memorizing good and bad tiles while crossing a bridge, balancing combat and utility while moving giant boulders onto pressure plates, and literally balancing stone tablets upon the hilt of a blade. Hello, I'm Eric Wyden, GM for Roleplay Tabletop, where we play one-shot adventures in Dungeons & Dragons and sometimes other RPGs, and when we're not doing that, we're discussing tips on how to level up your tabletop role-playing games. Today, we're going to showcase 3 actually interactive challenges that your players may encounter in a dungeon. All 3 involve physical interactions at the table, so I'll be showcasing 2 levels of crafting them together. One will be bare bones using paper or cardboard or things lying around your house, and one will be the upgraded, fancier craft method that you're going to see here. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the crafting part, as if you guys want, I can make an entire crafting video dedicated to making the higher end versions of these. Just let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know in the comments if you like this video and I'll make another one, as I figured I'd start with these 3 challenges, but I have a ton more. I also sincerely appreciate if you just simply click the like button, the subscribe button, and share this video with anyone that you think would enjoy it. We want to get enough support to make celebrity guests on our one-shots a regular thing, so thank you so much in advance. Now, as with all of our interactive challenges and puzzles, games, tests, or pivotal story beats, our challenges must meet 3 criteria. It must implement character skills and abilities, player skill, and a little bit of luck. But it all boils down to this term: player agency. Do the players have control over the outcome other than just rolling dice and crossing their fingers? Let's dive into our first one with Memory Lane. How it works. If you've seen Squid Game or a similar challenge in a few reality competition shows, this one's going to look familiar. There's a 2-step wide hallway, bridge, or game board the players have to cross. My example uses square tiles. The players must advance 1 step at a time and make it to the end. The trick is that each row has 1 good tile and 1 bad tile. They must choose 1 at a time, advancing along the good tiles, but once they step on a bad tile, they're reset to the start. This is called Memory Lane because the answers are immediately given upon choosing a tile. Then they go away. So the player must memorize the correct order. They're not allowed to take notes for the answers, otherwise it's just a simple game of 50-50 chance with no skill at all. I often have 12 rows and allow 3 penalty-free attempts before punishments or failures start kicking in. Before they begin, the players also make a perception check to add or possibly subtract from their free attempts according to this. If they roll 0 to a 5, they get -2, so they only get 1 penalty-free attempt before they start kicking in. They get a 6 to a 9, they get -1. 10 to a 13, no change, so they have their initial 3 penalty-free attempts. 14 to an 18, they get +1. 19 plus, they get +2. With this, maybe there's a ticking clock element to the dungeon that advances with each failure, or their reward on the other side decays with each failure, or they just take psychic damage each time they're magically teleported back to the start. Or maybe they're in a literal competition against each other to see who does it in the fewest attempts. Feel free to make it easier or harder according to your table, but here's a guide. 8 rows of tiles with 3 free attempts is easy. 12 rows with 3 free attempts is moderate. 16 rows with 5 free attempts is hard. Doing this with multiple players taking turns means that you have to shuffle it up. Just be sure to keep the rows in pairs. If you accidentally have 2 failures or 2 successes next to each other, then the game becomes unplayable. This employs character skill with a perception check to potentially add or subtract from their pool of free attempts, plus any magical spells or abilities or items that you see fit that could influence this could also affect their attempts as well. It employs player skill with their own memory serving as their tool. And for luck, we're rolling dice, baby! For crafting it. The first one is actually a no-craft method, though having no visual at all may make it more difficult for your players. You list the correct path on a notepad behind the screen, and then simply inform the players when they are right or wrong. They may say left, right, left. If your table doesn't care about looks, but wants some sort of visual, then cardboard squares with X's on one side will do the job. Now for the crafty. Make actual floor tiles, or whatever you decide to skin your location with. Put red or green paint under the bases, and just make sure that it doesn't make it to the very edge and then become visible when your tile is down. Like most terrain pieces that I make, these are made out of insulation foam. I cut it with a hot wire cutting table. I texture it by dappling it with a ball of tinfoil. I base coat it with Mod Podge mixed with black paint. Then I paint it gray, coat it with a black wash, and then finish with a dry brush with white. Then, paint the bottoms. Now on to roll and groove. How it works. The players have to push a massive boulder around a room to land onto a number of different pressure plates while fighting minions relevant to the theme. Think spiders, spirits, skeletons, or tribal warriors. The giant boulder is in the center of the room that has a few walls or statues as obstacles that make guiding the boulder more than just a straight shot between the grooves with the pressure plates. There are 3 grooves with pressure plates and the boulder needs to be rolled onto in any order. When the boulder is moved for the first time, minions arrive. After every player turn, that player then also rolls a d4. The DM can, but I like my players to be interacting as much as possible. And a roll of a 1 or a 2 spawns an additional minion. An additional minion also always spawns an initiative count 20 and potentially 10 or even more depending upon the level and the action economy of the party. Just a refresher, minions are 1 HP versions of otherwise standard creatures. So an orc minion would have 1 health, but it would otherwise have the regular orc stat block. Minions are perfect for situations like this because they can be rather easily disposed of, but if you let them go, they can cause quite a nuisance. This constant flood of minions harrying them as they're trying to push this boulder across this room raises the stakes, and it sets a timer, and it ensures that the intent of this challenge is implemented, which is having the players balance moving a boulder while dealing with the minions, rather than just having all the minions spawn one single time, and then the players all engage in standard combat, and then just freely move the boulder about. To move the boulder, a player must be adjacent to it, and then use their action to make an athletics check. Every 5 that they roll moves the boulder 5 feet. They roll a 20 or higher, then they move the boulder an additional 10 feet to the total. Feel free to allow creativity such as spellcasting or a magic item interaction. Also decide whether the boulder can be magically altered or if it's immune to magical effects such as levitation or enlarge reduce. If a player wanted to give it a push by blasting it with a fireball, this is how I'd rule it. Make a spell attack. Every threshold of 5 on the attack roll multiplies the damage. So if they roll a 5, it's times 1. They roll up to a 10, it's times 2. Up to a 15, it's times 3, and so on. Then they push the boulder a number of feet equal to the total damage done. So if they rolled a 14 to hit and the roll of 22 for damage, it would be a total of 44 damage, or they moved it 44 feet. In this case, however, I'd rule that the boulder only goes in one straight line, as the player blasted it with a fireball, and they aren't really steering it like they would rolling it by hand. This employs player agency with their decision-making to move the boulder about the room while protecting themselves from threats. It employs character skill with their ability checks to push the boulder as well as combat skills to protect themselves. And of course, we're rolling dice, so we still got some luck. For basic craft, you can have anything symbolize the boulder. You could use a d20 if you wanted to. And then you could have coins or little pieces of paper just symbolize the pressure plates. You don't have to go too crazy with it to bring this challenge to your table. If you want to get really crafty, then you can use what I did, and I got a styrofoam ball, textured it a little bit more with some rolled up tinfoil, then painted it gray, did a black wash, then did a dry brush with white. And that gave that stony look. And then, for doing the pressure plate, I did the same thing that we did to make our tiles for Memory Lane. And all I did was I cut a square out, I gouged to make a little ramp and a little divot, and then I again Mod Podged it, painted it, and then you're ready to go, and this guy will fit right on there and stay. Now for my favorite one, the thumbnail of the video, the Balancing Blade. This one is going to be in our upcoming Cosmere one-shot. Subscribe and click the little bell so that you're notified when it drops. It also helps us out big time. Anyway, our players enter a room. A giant stone bowl rests upon either side. One is full of different sized stone-like wafers, etched with symbols pertaining to the theme of the dungeon or adventure. The other one is empty. In the middle of the room is an altar with the hilt of an ancient blade rising from the slit within it. The players must pull the weapon from the altar, Then, balance as many wafers upon the hilt of the blade as they can before walking it over across the room and then dumping them into the other side. The challenge can be ran many ways, with the players being pitted against each other for the highest total, or to where they're rewarded or penalized according to how successful they are in totaling their scores as individuals, or maybe there's a ticking clock element and they need to take turns with attempts until they reach a certain number that have been transported. In this instance, this trial symbolizes balance, self-control, and the proper use of a blade to save as many lives as possible, focusing not upon the steel, but upon the hand that holds the hilt. But you can reskin this concept to stacking, balancing, and transporting any way that you want. Here's how it works. Each player makes either a sleight of hand or an acrobatics check, and each roll of 6 gives them 1 attempt, with a total of 1 attempt being the lowest possible. So anything 6 or less gets them 1 try, 7 to 12 gets them 2, 13 to 18 gets them 3, etc. Then they make their attempts using one hand to hold the sword. Neither the sword nor the person's arm is allowed to be resting on the table, as this makes it significantly easier. Make the distance that they have to travel roughly 3 feet. I have a little bit closer just to fit it on camera. Then they stack their wafers, one at a time. Transport them over to the bowl, and then dump them in. Then repeat for however many attempts their check has earned them. If at any point a wafer falls to the ground, then it's struck as a 0. Some can miss the bowl when they dump them in, and those can either count as a drop, completely wiping their total, or simply count the ones that made it into the bowl minus the ones that missed. At our table, we ruled that if any wafers fall during the stack or the transport, then the attempt is ruled as a 0, as this is meant to narratively represent their character traversing an entire room. After the player performs the transport and reaches the edge of the bowl, the GM declares that they made it, and then the players are allowed to drop as many as they want as they attempt to dump their tower into the bowl. This makes it so that if their stack is super tall, then they aren't penalized with just a flat 0, all because they did a really good job with the stacking and traveling part. After they dump their stack into the bowl, count how many made it in. If they get 3 attempts, they can do a small stack the first time as a safety net, then go for a big one, then maybe a medium one should that big one fall. This is where player logic and physical skill comes into play. Plus, if the players are competing against each other, then knowledge of the previous scores is also a factor. So if that's the case, then initiative order allows players to decide who they want to go after. So winning initiative gives you the choice to go last. This one that I crafted is genuinely way more difficult than it looks. The wafers are dappled and have all kinds of imperfections and impurities into them to make it more difficult, and the top of this hilt is very small. My table actually found that it's very deceiving as it's easier to stack it, but very hard to move without it falling over. So you can make it deceptively tall thinking you're good, and then as soon as you go to move, it just falls. For the sake of brevity, here's an example of my 3rd genuine attempt. So we'll see how well I do. My previous 2, I got 2 across pretty well. I got about 6 or 6 or 7 tall before it fell. And now I'm going to try and go for 4. It is a little bit harder because I'm holding it super high so you can see it above the screen. But let's see, I'm going to try and get 4. So usually we roll it to where you have to hold the sword pretty close to where that first bowl is. This is so awkward being this high. 2. Okay. Made it. 3 stayed in there, so counting that as a 3. So we employ character skills and abilities with checks that determine how many attempts they get to make. We employ player skill with the actual physical and mental challenge of stacking, balancing, and transporting the wafers. And then luck with still rolling dice, baby. For crafting, for the basic method, if you care about function and 0 about looks, use anything long enough to grip that has a flat top to serve as a sword. You could use children's building blocks or connect mega blocks or Legos together. Literally just a piece of wood. You could use a spoon and balance something in the spoon. I would say the most budget way would be to just do 2 fingers and have them stack D6s. And do it that way. And for the crafty, Obviously, we've got this going on. These are actually 2 stone-looking dice trays that we made also out of insulation foam and everything. These wafers are just bigger, more messed up versions of the tiles that we used for our initial memory lane game. And then for the sword, again, this is all made out of insulation foam, painted and everything the same way, other than this is a little bit of string, little rope that I have for wrapping Christmas gifts and stuff. So wrap that all on here and just hot glued everything together. I initially made this hilt steepled like this simply because it was initially this first one, and you could just keep stacking them forever. It was really easy. So I made a smaller one, and it was still too easy. So I had to make this even smaller one, and I figured, oh, well, it almost looks like the hilt was meant to look that way. But it ended up being it had to make it way smaller for it to not be too easy. So there you have it. 3 actually interactive challenges to bring your tabletop RPG adventures alive. Check out our channel where we've got some cool videos on making your games even more fun, like 5 actually interactive tavern games, how to learn to do a bunch of different voices, one where I do 25 different character voices, and of course our regular one-shots with fantastic stories that I absolutely pour my heart and soul into creating. The best way that you can support us and make this channel's ambition of making celebrity guests on our one-shots a regular thing is by clicking the like and subscribe buttons, the notification bell button, and watching some of our other videos and sharing them. If you've done those simple things, then thank you so much, but regardless, thank you just for being here. Always remember, as long as everyone's having fun, then you're doing it right. I'll catch you on the next one.